There's a lovely story that tabla player, one of the greatest, who died recently, Ustad Zakir Hussain Khan, he tells a story of Allah Rakha, his father, who was the greatest tabla player of his generation. How when he was born, when Zakir was born, he was brought home, and the tradition was that you hand it to your father, and the father was supposed to whisper some prayers in your ear. And Allah Rakha started doing, tabla sounds, sort of, tirikata da, ta, ta, din, ta, da. And his wife had a fit saying, "What are you doing? I mean, you're supposed to be, these are supposed to be prayers." And Allah Rakha says, "These are my prayers. And my gods are Ganesh and Saraswati. And I take my inspiration from them. And this is what I was taught by my teachers. And I'm passing that on to my son." And I think that's such a beautiful sort of sense. And what I love about it is that it's reaching across, and Zakir makes the point that this is his father reaching across religious divide. But Allah Rakha wasn't doing that. He was just delving into his own repository of belief. And what was appropriate was used without any thought that I am Muslim and I'm doing this. It's a Hindu tradition. It's a wonderful, unconscious sense of being able to reach these things.
It's beautiful. And I think, lest I sound too overly confident or naive about, we just talk to them about everything. The fear, of course, is, will all of these things, I'm gonna mess this quote up, but you can't reach water with 6 1-foot wells. It has to be 1 6-foot well, right?
Yeah.
So there will be time for that. And my hope is that they will choose with understanding and knowledge and intention, and not simply be handed, these are the things that need to be true to you and for you.
I'm delighted to have Jessica with me this afternoon. As part of my prep for this conversation, I watched Jessica's TED Talk, the one she did with her husband Reza, on the rewards and the challenges of an interfaith marriage. And I'd like to use that as a sort of starting off point. A marriage is not just the union of two people who love one another. It's also the coming together of two communities, some of whom may not share each other's values, belief systems. Can you speak to that a little? I mean, how did you navigate the rapids, and what do we have to learn from that?
This is officially the most difficult starting question I've ever had. We're diving into the in-laws right off the bat. So this is not being recorded, right?
I presume they're not within earshot.
Kids, shh, don't tell Nana. No, I'm just kidding. It's interesting. It's true that what you said is exactly true, and I'm not sure how much we really weighed that and considered that in the beginning. I mean, how many people madly in love do? But as things had unfolded, and quite quickly for us, we met, and a year later, we were pregnant with the twins. They're sitting back there. We have Cyrus and Jasper, who are 13. We have Asa, who is 10, and here he is. He's in the front, and Soraya, who is 5. And when we met, we did know that those values aligned. That came out quite quickly. And we met slightly older, so we knew who we were. We knew what we wanted. We were pretty sobered by other old relationships that had crashed and burned, as they say. So we knew who we were and what we wanted. The consideration of our communities and our families, I'll speak for mine first. I even mentioned this at lunch. It already came up at lunch. I have what I like to call love privilege. I mean, my parents and my brother, my family of origin, nothing but love, nothing but good. It's a little embarrassing. It's quite saccharine. But I felt so supported, so grounded. We grew up in a Presbyterian church, an old sleepy Presbyterian church. My brother went on to become a pastor of an evangelical church outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And despite me bringing home this loud Muslim guy, they can't always explain to members of my brother's church or other members of their communities why we're okay, but we are more than okay. And I've always felt awash and in love, surrounded by love, acceptance. I mean, they like Reza better than they like me. Like they never even blinked. For Reza's side of the family, his mom just wanted me to have lots of babies, and I did that, so we're good. No. Actually, Reza's family, in a strange way, I've never thought this thought out loud, and I keep trying to make eye contact with Reza back there, although he's just a silhouette. In some ways, his family mirrors our own family, our kids, more than mine, in terms of this facet of the variety of affiliations. So his father, who has since passed, was an adamant atheist. His mother, actually at one point, you can ask Reza about this later, Reza had actually converted her to evangelical Christianity when he was in high school. Again, whole chapter of Reza's life you can unpack later. And his sisters have varying beliefs as well. His youngest sister actually went back to Iran to have an arranged marriage, is very devout. They have all different belief sets, and that reflects our current family. So in terms of a community, or since we're talking family units first, I was just yet another color in the spectrum of different beliefs that his family represented. So it wasn't as much of a scary challenge as it, I believe, is for a lot of people bringing together communities that can have a lot of differences. But
can I push you a little further? Obviously,
yes.
when you get married, even the families, the large families, they are your well-wishers. They are wishing you well. They want, there is a lot of love around.
Yes.
But what lessons might you've learned in navigating the problems that you may have faced that may speak to the larger problems that people face the world over, where there isn't that love, where there are communities who, are hostile to one another, either for reasons of faith or for reasons of, politics or anything.
Sure.
Because I think your experience in the microcosm of your marriage may have a lot to teach the wider world about what it is to communicate with compassion, with love, with understanding, with confidence across barriers.
I love these questions. We've had, at this point, we've logged hours of conversation, and these have not come up. So I'm really enjoying this. I guess going into an interfaith partnership, which, by the way, is the majority of partnerships in the world today, it's such a distinct and obvious acknowledgement when you walk in with different labels and affiliations. You know that there are differences. You come in humbled by that. And so you have these conversations about agreement and meeting and compromise. You have them off the bat. Many other same religion, same faith affiliation couples, actually statistics show have less, how do I describe this? Let me do it the opposite. Interfaith couples, on average, have more dyadic consensus, and that's basically the strength of agreement is higher because they have conversations from day one saying, hey, we're probably going to approach this differently. And if there's any truth about relationships, you're two different people coming together. I believe there are a lot of assumptions that end up coming up in uncomfortable moments, maybe during stressful times, holidays, anything else, with couples that might have the same label of themselves, or they believe they are affiliated with the same community. So therefore, there's an assumption that they're going to agree on a lot of big issues, and that is just not always the case. So I think it's quite presumptuous for me to say, okay, world, here's what you should do that we do that works. Maybe it'll be helpful. But one, I think just acknowledgement of differences, and two, real intention and work around having those conversations, not to be the same, but to honor and listen to the other person, to understand where differences in opinion really matter in the practice of life, and in the living day to day, and the decision making with family, with children, with how you operate, what you do as a family. I think those pieces have really served us well.
Okay, thanks for that. And can I drill a little bit deeper?
Yeah.
Let me give you a sense of what I feel is one of the problems that applies when people communicate across barriers. Religions often exhort us to love one another, love thy neighbor as thyself, love thy neighbor, the person who is not me, who lives there, belongs in that community, as thyself. I love them as I would someone who belonged in my community. But religions typically also confer a sense of identity and belonging.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, belonging is a very primal need. It goes back to, let's say, early man in the savannah. If I'm together, then I can keep the lion at bay. If I'm not, the lion can pick me off. So often belonging is posited as something that is against something else. Not a thing. I am not just A in and for itself. I'm A because I'm not B. And this is not just a function of religion. It's a function of societies, of football clubs. I'm Arsenal because I'm not Spurs, and so on. So there is that contradiction, isn't there? That there are religions that will say, love thy neighbor as thyself, that's Matthew, but on the other hand, I will go to war with you to make you love your neighbor as yourself.
That always works.
Even if I have to kill you for it. So, speak to that a little bit if you can, on the basis not just of your experience of your families, but perhaps in your work as well, where there are also imperatives that have traditionally championed selfishness, entrepreneurship. I want to make money. Never mind you. How do you promote a sense of understanding across barriers in the various worlds that you've encountered?
So this is so interesting. Just promise not to hypnotize me up here in front of you. You can therapy me at any point here. Help me understand myself. Yeah. I have, through a series of experiences, become quite comfortable being on the outside when I need to. And so, look, any introduction of me, it was a lovely introduction. I have a bunch of asterisks, a bunch of caveats. So I am an American who did not vote for Trump. I teach entrepreneurship, but only the kind I think is worth doing, with very different metrics of success, right? I am a Christian. And I don't know, a bunch of other Christians might not like the way I put it together, and they might think I don't count. They might say you're not in the club, and I'm okay with that. It took time for me to become this way. It took heartbreak. It took really tricky decisions. But I feel very comfortable, and in my own skin, I feel very comfortable with the set of beliefs that I have and the set of beliefs that Reza and I share. And again, back to the being madly in love, who has not felt like you're in an island, you're the only people in the whole universe, right? So I do believe that the center of that for our relationship, each of us feeling very comfortable in who we are. I didn't need Reza to match up with the same sets of things that any other community. I believe we're in a moment in time where we can form so much of our identity in our communities as we will define them for ourselves. I think the most important thing in the first 20 years of my life, the thing that has defined me the most by far, was my own faith journey. And then I unwound some pieces and parts of that, and I kept the pieces that mattered the most to me. And I decided there's doctrine and there's belief, and they're different. There's belief and there's practice, and hopefully they're not too different. Hopefully you're in line and integrated with those things. That's the piece that matters the most to me. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the question directly enough, but keep drilling. Keep drilling if you'd like.
No. That's very beautiful, actually. That there's doctrine and there's belief and then there's practice. That's you've got your children with you. It's wonderful to see them. I have to say, we had lunch together, and I have not seen for more, yes, one's waving there, more well-behaved children, I have to say. They were wonderful. They were very...
I can second that.
Yeah, there you are. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's...
Thank you.
So in terms of bringing the children up, there are obvious questions here about, not just about, the faiths to which you and Reza belong, either nominally or deeply.
Yeah.
But to what extent are you able to apply the lessons that you learned through the 20 years of your journey?
Yes.
And what might you sort of feel is, profitable for us to understand in terms of raising our children, whether or not we're in interfaith marriages?
Sure. So there's a lot of dichotomies here. So there's our own personal sets of beliefs, practices, ways that we name our beliefs and our associations for just me as an individual and Reza as an individual. Then there's the family set of values, that overlap, right? The Venn diagram, the stuff in the middle. And then there is what we do with this. And so we very simply think about both depth of practice, shared practices, prayer, meditation, worship, reading and gleaning meaning from Holy Scriptures, all kinds. And then there's the breadth that we try to give our children. So we attend a very, very liberal, again, like would a lot of the folks in my hometown think our church counts? I don't know, it doesn't matter. But it's a very liberal Episcopalian church that is like a group of activists more than anything. It's been there, Rez, how old is our church? Really, it's been there forever. It's this fixture. But then we'll go to church, and then we'll come home and we'll do sort of a world religions class with the kids. We don't get it right every Sunday. It's a bit hodgepodgey, but we used to be quite regular with this. And our kids are pretty well versed in, they're pretty religiously literate citizens. So they understand, which is not something that many people, I think a lot of Americans in particular, don't understand very well, this difference between belief and practice and the study of other cultures and other belief systems and other religions as an academic pursuit. So our kids have read through their Kids Ramayana many times. Our kids have a whole bookshelf, a very large section of our little library at home of all different kinds of religious texts, kids' versions and everything. They understand and they're very, very well-versed in different myths and legends. They get it. They get what it means to read stories, interpret symbols and metaphors, have cultural sort of, whether it's songs or art that are associated with a religion. I think, I would like to say, they understand what religions are, what religion is. And I will give you one example. I'll do a little humble brag here. I think it was, 4 years ago, I think. Is that right? No, it would have been COVID, 3 years ago. And the twins were on a museum tour, and of course I always go to that stuff, so I was a chaperone. And I'm trying to be cool and stay back, but I'm so proud and just following them around. And there was a docent who was, I think it was in front of Jas, was it a Ganesha statue? Yeah. And the docent starts to describe the story and starts to walk away, and Jasper says, actually, you got a few things wrong. Do you see in this hand he's holding this, and the mouse? Let me tell you about that mouse. And he starts to teach the class about a little bit more of the background and the history and the story of Ganesha than the docent even knew. And I kid you not, you cannot make this stuff up. I kid you not, Cyrus on the other side of the museum. Cyrus, what were you schooling everyone on? I kid you not, one of the parents from the other side, Cyrus's group, said it was amazing how Cyrus told the docent about whatever the thing was they were looking at. And they were both based on some of the religious lessons that we had gone over at home. So that's my long answer. Sorry, depth and breadth. We practice together. We talk about what we agreed with and didn't agree with when we come home. And then we do world religions lessons a lot at home.
I think that's fabulous.
It's
that's
fun.
A lovely story. Thank you. And I think, this is a profound gift that you're giving the children, which is the ability to draw on different traditions. And in time, they're still very young, and in time, as they deepen their understanding, I can see that it can become so much a part of them that they delve into these things unthinkingly, not thinking that they are reaching across a barrier or a divide, but just reaching into their own repository of, understanding. And I think that's marvelous. That's very, very good. You mentioned Ganesh, and Jay is here, and I'm seeing Jay after a long time. I've got to tell a lovely little story here, which I find very, very sort of impressive, and it's the sort of thing that could well happen. We have in common an interest in, and he's a great master of Indian classical music. But there's a lovely story that tabla player, one of the greatest, who died recently, Zakir Hussain Khan. He tells a story of Allah Rakha, his father, who was the greatest tabla player of his generation. How when Zakir was born, he was brought home, and the tradition was that you hand it to your father, and the father was supposed to whisper some prayers in your ear. And Allah Rakha started doing, tabla sounds, sort of, tirikata da, 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 din, da, da. And his wife had a fit, saying, "What are you doing? I mean, you're supposed to be, these are supposed to be prayers." And Allah Rakha says, "These are my prayers. And my gods are Ganesh and Saraswati, and I take my inspiration from them. And this is what I was taught by my teachers, and I'm passing that on to my son. And I think that's such a beautiful sort of sense. And what I love about it is that it's reaching across, and Zakir makes the point that this is his father reaching across religious divide. But Alaraka wasn't doing that. He was just delving into his own repository of belief. And what was appropriate was used without any thought that I am Muslim and I'm doing this. It's a Hindu tradition. It's a wonderful, unconscious sense of being able to reach these things.
It's beautiful. And, you know, I think lest I sound too overly confident or naive about, oh, we just talk to them about everything. The fear, of course, is will all of these things, you know, I'm gonna mess this quote up, but you can't reach water with 6 1-foot wells. It has to be 1 6-foot well, right?
Yeah.
So there will be time for that. And my hope is that they will choose with understanding and knowledge and intention, and not simply be handed, these are the things that need to be true to you and for you. And I hope that we're giving them enough of both. This, again, the practice, the belief, the real adherence to values. There are things that matter in our family that they know. And those things are reflected in a number of different religions. So it'll be very interesting to see over time what they really, truly come to choose. And I do hope that it's not just a little bit of everything forever, but they find their path and we'll be enriched and deepened by understanding and experiencing their journeys, whether they're very different than ours or not.
Yeah, I think the key here is you're giving them the opportunity to have this breath, and the depth will come. But eventually, I think the thing that matters most in this, in the transcendence of these barriers, is to be impervious to the barriers.
Yeah.
Not to consciously transcend a barrier,
Yes.
but just to work from a place where the barriers just aren't there. I mean, just another little story that comes to mind. I'm just saying this because sometimes these stories are inspirational, because these are the ways in which people have lived. Again, this is another story that I'm sure Jay will know. Bismillah Khan lived in Benares, which is a holy city on the river Ganga. And he famously didn't do a lot of performances and so on. And there's a journalist, and I heard this from this person, who interviewed him and said, why don't you go off and go to America and make money like Ravi Shankar and so on? Why don't you do this? Why do you always stay in Benares? And he said, in truth, I have only one job. And that is at dawn every morning, a boatman takes me into the river. I can see Jay nodding here. And I play to wake the gods up in their temples. That's the only job I have. Now, he's not even making the point. I'm making the point. But to him, it's irrelevant that he is Bismillah Khan. He's Muslim. And he's waking the gods up in their temples, and these are Hindu gods. And for him, the question doesn't arise. I mean, that is his job. It's his sacred duty. And I think that's so precious. And the reason I'm saying this is sometimes these stories, not just the academic understanding of what the tenets of a religion are and so on, but sometimes the stories of how people have lived and how in their lives they've transcended these barriers is so enriching and it's so profound.
Amen, if I can say that.
Let's just turn to your you teach entrepreneurship and so on. There again, there is an implicit sense of barrier, because if there's a sense that there is a finite pool of money, and if I'm going to get my share, then I've got to deny the other person, their share. How do you teach entrepreneurship, and do you allow any of your spiritual values to inform the manner in which you teach? And what kind of entrepreneurs are in the next generation who may be, as your children are, better informed about spiritual practice in the world of business? This seems so easily to be a contradiction, and yet it doesn't have to be. So.
It does not have to be. So I really like, it took me a minute to feel comfortable with it, but now I'm very proud of it. I am a professor of the practice of entrepreneurship. So I don't have a PhD, but I spent 25 years doing the thing itself, and so enough practice, and you get to teach the thing. So my journey to becoming an entrepreneur and then coming to this place, I'm still not done with my first full year as a full-time professor. But I've taught enough that they let me jump right in. The beginnings for me, I studied poetry and philosophy. I never took a business class in my undergraduate education. I thought business was pure evil. I thought, why would anyone want to spend their beautiful life waking up and trying to get money from anyone? Who cares about it anyway? And why would you want to trick people into selling them things they don't need? I just thought it was gross. I wanted nothing to do with it. I graduate. I get a temp job. I happened to land at Stanford in the Graduate School of Business, and my very first job out of undergrad was doing events and administrative stuff. But I was in this business school, and I was very skeptical. I thought I was in the lion's den. Turns out I wasn't just in the business school. I was in a place called the Center for Social Innovation. So after a few weeks of being very defensive and skeptical, I learned that there were people there every day, thinking about how to use entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking, and business skills to move people and money and resources around in ways that were absolutely aligned with the values that I had. They wanted to do good with these ventures they were creating. Sometimes they were nonprofits and NGOs, sometimes they were for-profits. It didn't matter. The structure was, you could do anything with any structure, really. But they had this intention of building these redemptive, beautiful little machines that would run and create goodness in the world. And I just thought it was the best thing I'd ever heard. And one day, 3 years into this job, where I started to crash classes and go to professors' office hours and just learn as much as I could as a staff. I was a kind of a sponge and not a full-time student yet. But basically, one day, this gentleman, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, came to speak. And I thought, who's this guy? This was fall of 2003, 3 years before he and his Grameen Bank would win the Nobel Peace Prize for their pioneering work in modern microfinance. But I heard him speak, and I thought, that's what I want to do. So I quit my job. I learned later, when I did go back to get my MBA at Stanford, that I'm very risk-tolerant. I didn't know that language. But I thought, I'm going to quit my job and move to East Africa and beg my way into an unpaid internship. So that's what I did. And I met people there who had received $100. It was very poetic. $100 to start or to grow their businesses. It wasn't actually even traditional microcredit. It wasn't even a small loan. It was simply a grant. But it allowed people to really just grab onto that very first rung of the economic ladder and to start to grow their daily activities into something that could sustain livelihood for their families. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I loved it so much. And for me, it broke open, and it totally broke open this paradigm that I had been handed my whole life as a middle-class American white lady who had been told, here's the world, there's a lot of people suffering. The way for you to do something about it is to throw some change in the jar, give a little money, and then the nonprofits and NGOs out there will do the work, and you can go on with the rest of your life. It was a terrible role to play in that story, but it was really the only one I heard and understood, and I didn't like it. So when I was there, a few years out of undergrad, in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania for a few months, listening to the stories of people who had received $100, and through entrepreneurship, survival entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship nonetheless, had changed their lives. It changed the way I saw the world. It changed the way I saw my possible role in that world and my relationship with people that I desperately wanted to be useful to. So that's when I started, as a little experiment, Kiva, which was a platform where you could lend $25 or more for no interest to yourself, so just $25 to another person. And over time, they would lend that money. They would repay that money back. Our first round of loans was just 7 people in Uganda. It was like $3,000 total, very small. They all paid back. We thought, oh, that worked. Let's do it again. Did it again. The first year of loans was about, oh my gosh, what's my first year? We did $3,000 the first year. We did, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the first year. The first year was $500,000. I'm sorry, it was $500,000. The second year was 15 million. The next year was 40. The next 100. It's closing in on $3 billion in loans, $25 at a time, from everyday people to other everyday people, for the purpose of providing a chance for those individuals to, through entrepreneurship, better their lives. It's this platform for opportunity, and selfishly, from the lender side, it's a way for people to read and understand the story of another human being, that is not a carefully crafted story of sadness and suffering to make that person feel guilty, if not shameful, about their own relative wealth and wellness. It's a platform that says, very honestly, in the words of the borrowers, here's my life, here's what I'm doing, I need $300 to buy some more goats, help me out. And somebody can come in and ideally through a partnership of equality, provide that funding and get it back. I say all that because that's my version of entrepreneurship. Also, when you create an NGO, you create a 501c3 nonprofit in the US, you do not cash out, you kind of mic drop, and walk away and get a job to pay off your student loans. So it was not about let's go make money, or it was just moving the right things around to get opportunity to people that didn't have it. That's how I think about entrepreneurship. That's how I teach entrepreneurship. I do not use the words that are traditionally used in business schools like value creation. That does not just mean let's make money. It means something much broader. I have a whole class that I started this year. They let me create a new class called the Startup Jungle. And we look at these models of, unicorns, billion-dollar companies, gazelles, fast-growth companies, zebras, fast-growth but socially responsible companies. We look at all these funny analogies that we have, and every class I ask my students to question assumptions about the startup world and the venture world. There's a lot to be questioned. And we challenge those assumptions, and we say, how should this be different? How should the world be different? What can we build that is not just for a paying customer? And it's a lot harder to do that. I show them how difficult and different it is to create value over here, even though maybe your person that's paying for that value isn't the recipient, right? If you're serving somebody that cannot pay, you have to do two things well. You have to create that value and get it to the person, but you also have to talk to someone over here who can subsidize that value and wants to be a part of the story as a donor or some other supporter. Anyway, that's how I teach. I teach all sorts of parts and pieces and facets and angles of entrepreneurship, but to me, my favorite academic definition of entrepreneurship might sound very boring, but to me it's romantic and passionate and amazing. It's Howard Stevenson, a Harvard Business School professor. He says entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. Okay. The pursuit, the running after, right? This falling in love with and running after an opportunity, this invisible imaginary idea of what the world could be out there without regard to resources currently controlled. I put in the blank there. I like to take artistic liberty and say without regard to position or power or, resources, money, sure, or pedigree. You just decide that you're going to find a way. It is a very faith-building exercise in my experience. It is absolutely resonant with, and to me, reminds me so much of my own faith journey and understanding of God, belief in an invisible thing out there in the distance, the running after it, the making sacrifices to get there. It's to me very, very much not one and the same, but deeply related to my own journey and my own set of beliefs. That's a really long answer.
Yeah, but that's a lovely answer. That's beautiful. That's that's inspirational. How is your take on entrepreneurship? How does it how's it received by your students? Because
How'd I get hired? No.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No, well, I can see why you got hired, but how do you come across? Because a lot of your stuff does fly in the face of what most people would see. Yeah. I see it as a value. I'm sure the faculty see it as a value, but what about your students? How do they see this? Are they receptive?
I'm an evangelist.
Do you inspire them to be receptive? I mean, how does that work?
If I may say, I'm learning that one of the metrics of success is, are your classes filled up? And my class filled up. We're doing good. My students understand what they're going to get with me, I think. But once they walk in the door, what I do, speaking to your point about stories, we do a lot of case studies. We do a lot of guests and conversations with people that I believe in and I admire and that I've watched over the years. Just my friends, my colleagues, who I know are pursuing something that is of their own design and based on their own values and what they believe in. I actually have in my back pocket all kinds of stats about purpose-driven companies, how they outperform the market. It's funny because we know all of this is true, and yet, to me, a lot of folks sort of still prop themselves up and puff themselves up on the way it's done, the way things have always been funded, the stories you need to tell. about what you're going to go do to get that funding, my students and the people around me, I think, feel relieved, because I think the way that it's not just me. There's a whole speaking of community too, there's a community of people that see the world in this way and like to practice the building of ventures, the creation of new ventures in this way. I'm just one of them. And I think there's a bit of a relief, because to me, it aligns so much more with what feels true and right, what feels in alignment with the way we're designed, what we're designed to desire. That I was mentioning this earlier to a friend I don't see in the audience right now. I don't have my glasses on. But one of the first things in the Bible, the first thing in the Bible that you'll see that is in red, if you have one of those Bibles where Jesus' words are in red, the very first thing you come up on is, what do you want, right? I think the things we want truly, if we're honest with ourselves, are more in line with the kind of entrepreneurship I teach, the kind of value creation I teach, the kind of metrics of success that I teach. There are a lot of people that really want that. And I think the world that we want to see, that we want to build, I believe that it's possible. And I believe if we're just more honest with ourselves and people give us permission and space to be honest with ourselves, we'll build better little machines. We'll build better communities, better ventures, better teams of people to get there. So my sense is that people feel validated and relieved and like they can be a little more honest with themselves about what they want.
Yeah, this is visionary and wonderful, and that the fact that you're seeing this through into practice is fabulous. I think this is very, very good. I want to throw this open to the floor. I mean, are there any questions that anyone in the audience? Yep, here you are.
My friend.
Jessica, do you think God has a position on capitalism?
No. And I think right now in this moment in time, the main problem is we don't understand what enough means. And capitalism doesn't have to be as ugly as it is. I don't think fundamentally it has to be this way. And I think if God has a position, it's more about the fear that drives us to keep wanting and holding on to more for ourselves versus being more open to others, sharing, if you will.
Could be a longer conversation.
I'm in. Let's do it.
You're so inspiring, and I hope that your students, really care about the planet as well, because you're going to just create miracles. But what I'm interested in knowing is, do you think that the privilege of love that you come from is related to where you are now?
I think it's the only thing that is it's the most important thing by far. And I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of work. You can give me some feedback maybe. I used to think I was so afraid of not just asking hard questions to my own faith community, but being able to say, oh, I don't like that piece. No, I love these people too, and I can tell you have a problem with them. No, I don't think that's wrong. I think what's wrong is the way you're judging or whatever. To really not just question, but say, here's what I believe and what I don't agree with in my church, for example. Not currently, but I would do it there too. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on how I was going to answer this question. Can you ask this one more time to me? The love, yeah. Thank you. So I've wondered how much of things that have worked in my life, if you just look at it in a very utilitarian way, how much of my exact prescribed faith that I, in a very pure and wonderful and beautiful way, I think, just believed. I hook, line, and sinker, total zealot for the first 2 decades of my life. And a lot of it really worked for me. Like the outputs and the outcomes aligned with my goals. It sounds so crass, but I'm just being honest. When I started to step away from and question and disagree, I wondered if things would still work in my life. Like when I really turned more towards myself and what I believe the presence of God within myself, versus what I thought I was supposed to think. That's when things got even better. But it was so scary. It was so scary to do that. And I think I was able to do that and to be strong and to, in a way, save myself from certain things in my life because I had such a strong foundation of love, because I always have had such a strong sense of safety and home and resilience, and there was nothing I could do to be separated from that love. Sorry I got lost in my answer there for a minute. I apologize. It's a good one. Good question. Hi.
Hi. In one sentence, what for you is spirituality?
Acknowledgement and presence. Acknowledgement of and presence with all that is beyond us. Oh, I can't even see. Oh, hi.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
you're right there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's enough time to answer this question, but then my question fully revolves around the idea of interwoven faith itself.
Yes.
So it's just a little concern or question regarding
Sure.
how if children grow up with these many faith and stories at one point of time, and when there's a risk of the breadth and depth being exchanged, where do you think in a few years when challenges start showing up in their life, they won't be afraid of 6 gods now, but then they will actually find a way to get into one religion more, like one faith more, because I think faith is more than just stories. How do you give them a chance to not be spiritually confused, but then find the truth through one portal itself? What's that difference for you?
I am very humbled by your question, and we are, as we all are, really making it up as we go. We're figuring it out as we go. And I don't want to over-glorify this new made-up way. I just feel like it's the most honest. And I always had imagined I would kind of go back to the beginning with my kids, the beginning for me and the beginning of my own spiritual journey as a kid that felt so pure and good and honest. But as we get older, of course, it changes. And so I felt like I couldn't, in my own heart, my own right mind, go back to the childlike ways of belief for myself with them. So all I can be is honest, and all I can be is connected to them and available to them. And to your earlier question, provide as much of that overwhelming love as I can, so that is a piece of their spiritual foundation. And that can be, if I can be a channel and a model in a small way for the vast love of the divine through my own love to them, I can show them a little piece, a little glimmer of that, then I'll feel, I believe they will have enough of that foundation to be okay, and that the stories will have as deep of a meaning, some of them, as the ones that I was handed have had for me in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you. Asa, did you have one question real quick, babe?
Who's your favorite child?
Oh my gosh. All of you. All of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was really inspirational. Thank you. Thank you. And all the best.
Thank you.